Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor to announce to you all that in the last chapter of One Piece, chapter 1014, the identity of Joy Boy has still not been revealed. However, we got a clue, kind of, sort of. So if you have your One Piece theory board, you know, with a bunch of pictures and like strings attached to it, that's another thing you can add. Maybe connect a few dots, okay? And it's weird too. I mean, out of everything that happened in the chapter, that Joy Boy line is the thing everybody's focusing on. You're not focusing on the absolute metal scene of Monster Point Chopper brawling, wrestling with Queen, who I may remind you is a giant brachiosaur. That was clearly the coolest part of that chapter, but whatever. Everyone seems to want to talk about Joy Boy, so I guess we'll do that first. I mean, it was a pretty interesting scene, if nothing else. Okay, so first and foremost, it seems the way that Kaido was saying this to Luffy, or rather lamenting to himself as Luffy plummeted down to his watery grave, you know, he said, you couldn't be Joy Boy either, or it seems you could not become Joy Boy, alright? So Joy Boy was definitely a real person that lived way back during the Void Century, and he was mentioned by Odin when he was returning to Wano right before the Roger Pirates dropped Odin back off at Wano. He said that I need to make sure that in 20 years Wano Kuni is open to the world to ready for Joy Boy's arrival. Okay, by the time Joy Boy arrives in the world, Wano has to be an open country is what Odin's dream was, that he then passed down to his scabbards, okay? So it was kind of ambiguous whether or not he meant like Joy Boy was gonna come back from the past, because we know time travel is a thing in One Piece. You know, it's like maybe the previous user of the Toki Toki no Mi before Toki. By the way, isn't that weird that her name is Toki and that the devil fruit is named Toki Toki? And I brought that up before. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think like the Toki Toki no Mi is so damn powerful, like they don't just let it get reincarnated and for any random person to eat. It might be a situation where it's like, okay, like there's a ritual to like pass down the Toki Toki no Mi to like the next successor, kind of like the Titan powers in Attack on Titan, maybe, because it's such a powerful fruit. So maybe like the previous user of the Toki Toki no Mi was also named Toki or whatever, and then that person sent Joy Boy into the future, you know, and then he's going to arrive right here and now during the Battle of Wano, or maybe later, like near the end of the story or something like that. That was one possibility, but the way that Kaido was talking about it seemed to indicate otherwise. It seemed to indicate that Joy Boy was more of a title that can be bestowed to somebody, and that he was simply mentioning that Luffy could not bear that title, or he felt like, you know, Luffy did not measure up to the status of Joy Boy, so he could not become Joy Boy either. Now, when he said either, you know, I thought that was referring also to Momonosuke, because that was kind of like what's part of the present of Onigashima right now, you know, like Kaido was interested in Momo, and then Momo, after they talked, after he was on the execution platform, Kaido really didn't think that he measured up to like Odin's legacy, and then maybe Luffy was like the other option, like Kaido's like, alright, well, if it wasn't Odin's son, maybe it was this Straw Hat Luffy kid, and then he got knocked off of the Muffin Mountain. He's like, well, I guess it wasn't him either, okay? So there's a lot of people talking about this. One aspect of this that I have to say I really like, and I didn't even really consider this, but I gotta bring it up right here, okay? So if we're going with the idea that Joy Boy is a title, like Joy Boy, the original from the Void Century, he is long dead, and so we have to have, like, not necessarily a reincarnation of that Joy Boy, but the title that Joy Boy, you know, had at the time is going to be, you know, somebody in the present line. Maybe it's Luffy, maybe it's somebody else with the will of D, okay? The point is, and this is where the theory kind of kicks off in a big way, you have Poseidon, right? You have Poseidon, or Shirahoshi right now, or rather, Shirahoshi bearing the title of Poseidon, the ancient weapon that can command Sea Kings. And then we have the apology letter that Joy Boy wrote to Poseidon and the people of Fishman Island, you know, in the Sea Forest, that's like lamenting that, you know, he could not fulfill that promise, okay, to that mermaid princess, okay? So, the general idea is that throughout the generations, throughout the centuries, ever since the Void Century, there's going to be someone that's going to bear the title of Joy Boy, and then it's somebody else, a mermaid princess, that's going to bear the title of Poseidon. Now, here's the kicker. Neptune stated that, yeah, every few generations, every few centuries, a mermaid is born that bears the title of Poseidon, okay? So it's not every single mermaid princess. Could have only happened maybe once, could have happened more than that, but the point is, Shirahoshi is Poseidon right now, okay? And then somebody else also bears that title of Joy Boy, and the idea is, if they both exist at the same time period, boom, that's when stuff happens. Okay, what will happen exactly? I don't know. Sea Kings will wipe out the world. Ancient weapons will revive. The One Piece, whatever is on Laugh Tale, will become activated where it wasn't active, or, you know, they weren't there on time when Roger went. But the idea is, if you have a reincarnate or the bestowed title of Joy Boy at the same time that the title of Poseidon exists, that's when things get intense. And that kind of harkens back to what happened with Roger at Laugh Tale. When Roger arrived at Laugh Tale, he laughed because he's just like, oh, we're too early. And it might be like whatever's at Laugh Tale indicated that you cannot use this, or you can't properly reach what you're trying to seek, the One Piece, unless that Poseidon is here as well. So Roger could have very well have had the title of Joy Boy, but, you know, Shirahoshi hadn't even been born yet. So that was just why they felt like, oh, we got there too early, okay? It's like the timelines didn't sync up well enough. There could have been a situation a few hundred years ago, for example, where Poseidon could have existed as a mermaid princess, but there was no reincarnate or those that bore the title of Joy Boy, and so therefore it didn't work. And so that mermaid princess grew old and died, and then it has to trust it to the next generation. So in the situation with Roger, he was Joy Boy, or had the title of Joy Boy, but there was no Poseidon. So that's why Roger laughed, okay? So I kind of like that idea where there's two parts of this. There's like a key and a lock, and they both have to exist at the exact same point, or else they're useless, you know, by themselves, okay? And so that would make sense why, after like 800 years, and considering the fact the Mermaid Princess is on Fishman Island, and Joy Boy could be like, I'm assuming anybody that bears the Will of D could hold the title of Joy Boy, can be born pretty much anywhere in the world. The odds of them being born at the same exact moment, and the odds of them running across each other, that's very, very rare. There might even have been an instance over the last 800 years since the Void Century where maybe Poseidon and Joy Boy did exist at the same time, but they just never came into contact with one another. That could be a situation too. Maybe it was somebody that had the Will of D that was born in the West Blue but never set out to sea, or something happened, or maybe they died young or something, but they maybe existed at the same point, but that's not good enough just to exist at the same point. They have to both go to Laugh Tale together, for instance, okay? So, I mean, like, it was indicated definitely that Shirahoshi was going to come back into the story at some point. The promise she made with Luffy and everybody, like, to go into the surface and actually witness a real forest at some point. Forests seem to be a very important theme with Shirahoshi, so it would be interesting if when they get to Laugh Tale, we've never really seen Laugh Tale outside of just this vague image that, you know, Crocus spoke about in the manga, like at chapter 100 or whatever. It could look completely different from this in the final draft. But yeah, what if Laugh Tale is like a giant forest or something, or there's a giant forest on the island, and so that way, you know, Shirahoshi comes back and then meets the Straw Hats, and like they walk through a forest, and at the, you know, the center of this forest, there's like a temple or something, and then that's a temple where Luffy and Shirahoshi have to both be present, and then whatever happens there, happens there. I'm not really sure. Here's a question. How do you feel about the mechanism of this on Laugh Tale? What do I mean by that? Well, like, okay, what was the thing that Roger, like, did he read something? Was it a Rio poneglyph? Was it something else? Was there somebody, I guess not somebody present on Laugh Tale, was it like a blue Jedi spirit of Joy Boy, like a recording of him, and Roger went up and like pushed a button and then he appeared on a pedestal and he's like, hey, how you doing? My name's Joy Boy. I'm the person that found this island. I forgot to name it, so if you have any good ideas, go for it. Anyway, here's the deal. If you're reading this or if you're listening to this, you are a reincarnation of me. However, unless you also have a mermaid princess by the name of Poseidon here as well, I'm sorry, I can't let you into the gates of this temple or something, you know? How exactly did that work? Like, what was was the thing that Roger saw that made him laugh out loud. I guess it could have just been a poneglyph, maybe even the Rio poneglyph, and Odin was describing it, or I guess Odin didn't even have to read it for him, because with Roger's ability to hear the voice of all things, he could have just glanced at the poneglyph and, like, understood, and maybe he, you know, read it out loud or spoke about the general premise, and then his crew, well, no, because his crew, all of the crew laughed at the same time. That's the thing. So that seems to imply whatever they saw, they all saw as a group. Roger, Odin, Rayleigh, Crocus, and then everybody else on the crew all saw it at once, and their first reaction was to bust out laughing. So that makes me think, like, it's not a poneglyph. It might be, I don't know, a mural or something. Maybe it's a drawing, and the drawing, maybe there was an image of somebody that maybe looked like Roger. Maybe Joy Boy looked a lot like Roger, and as we saw from Roger's backstory, when he started his journey in, like, his early 20s, Roger looked a lot like Luffy. So maybe that's why they laughed. Like, they saw this big mural of somebody that resembled their captain, Captain Roger, with the mermaid princess, and, like, the mural spoke about, like, you know, the like, maybe there's a drawing of, like, you know, here's what's going to happen when these two unite or something, and it's going to bring peace and prosperity to the world, or, like, there's a bunch of happy dancing sea kings on the mural. So they see this, and Roger's like, oh, I get it, okay. So Joy Boy was like me, or I'm like Joy Boy, but we don't have the mermaid princess because she's not born yet. And so maybe that's what he meant by, like, oh, it's such a funny story, Joy Boy. I wish I would have lived in the era that you lived in, okay? And then they all saw that at the same time. It was something that they could all comprehend and react to at the same moment. Because you'd figure, like, if it was something only Roger could read and Odin could read on a poneglyph, they wouldn't all, like, react that way at once. But I guess there's other ways around it. So, yeah, now, like I said in the review, just because Kaido said that, you know, Luffy was not Joy Boy, or he could not become Joy Boy, that doesn't mean it's true. That's just Kaido's opinion at that moment. Also, what exactly does it mean to bear the title of Joy Boy? You know, how exactly do you know somebody is reaching that level, okay? Well, I would say extreme proficiency in Conqueror's Haki is sort of the tall tale sign here, okay? Momo, or the ability to hear the voice of all things, is another thing. Like, Momo can hear the voice of all things, Luffy can hear it, Roger could hear it, okay? Out of every character that we know of so far in the story, other than Joy Boy himself, the person that probably most likely did bear this title was Roger, okay? So what did Roger have that Momo and Luffy both have? Voice of all things. Joy Boy probably had Conqueror's Haki too. Luffy has Conqueror's. I'm sure after Momo grows up, he might be able to develop Conqueror's Haki as well. But let's put that on the side for right now and just look at the voice of all things, okay? So every few generations, there's somebody or multiple people in the world that are born with this voice of all things. There could be more in one generation. However, not everyone that bears that ability is going to become the next Joy Boy. It's like maybe, okay, you have the potential to become the next Joy Boy, but there's more stuff that you need to accomplish before you actually reach that point. One of which might be just surviving, okay? So maybe it's like Kaido defeated him, and Kaido was so sure, like, he killed Luffy, because he, like, knocked him unconscious, and he bested him in a battle of Conqueror's Haki, knocked him over the edge of Onigashima, now he's falling into the ocean. Kaido was probably pretty certain Luffy's gonna die now, and so that's the reason he said it. He's like, well, I thought you could become the next Joy Boy, but you're dead now, so I guess that means you're not, okay? And so that's the end of that. And so maybe that's, like, Kaido's ambition right now. He's just, like, he learned about this prophecy, which, by the way, how did Kaido learn about this? Alright, so he traveled on Rox's crew for a while. He might have heard about it then, because we have no idea what's up with Rox. We know Rox had the Will of D, so maybe Rox knew about this too. Rox might have known about the prophecy with Joy Boy or whatever, you know, and he spoke to Kaido about it, and that's how Kaido found out. Yes, Kaido does have a road poneglyph and some other poneglyphs, you know, in access to Wano, but who would have read them? You know, who on Wano would have have the ability to read them? You know, Big Mom had the Third Eye Tribe. I'm trying to think, like, other than Odin or anybody else. Like, yeah, okay, so I will say this. The Kozuki clan did pass down the knowledge to read the poneglyphs. I would assume that knowledge was not passed down through, like, actual script. Like, here's a translated alphabet of the poneglyphs. Like, that's just passed down mentally, and then you would just pass it on to your son or daughter in the Kozuki clan. But maybe there was something written somewhere in the castle. Like, if that information to decipher the poneglyphs would have existed anywhere, it probably would have existed in the castle, if it did exist at all. So, at any rate, though, Kaido learned about this prophecy, and also there was the prophecy that Toki gave, the prophecy, not really a prophecy, but like Odin spoke about before Kaido executed him and everything like that. So Kaido might have this idea of like, you know, oh, if this reincarnation of Joy Boy arrives, I bet they're gonna be really strong, right? So it's sort of like, this is what Kaido has been waiting for decades, right? Like, this is my one shot at an actual challenge. This is my one chance at a real fight, okay? If I can meet this this person that bears the title of Joy Boy, and I can crush them, you know, that truly means I am the strongest in the entire world, and, like, no one could best me, right? It might also be out of fear, like, similar to Orochi, not quite as pronounced with Kaido, but it might be a situation where Kaido's like, you know, I don't want this prophecy to be fulfilled with, like, Joy Boy and Laugh Tale and what happened with Roger or whatever. I have to eliminate, the person that is the title of Joy Boy. If I can eliminate them, then the prophecy cannot come to fruition, okay? And so it might be something like that, something else that might warp the world in a way, because Kaido has his own plans for the world. Kaido wants to create the pirate paradise. He wants to do all that kind of stuff. He can't do that if Joy Boy and Poseidon have their way and do their own stuff. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna just kill Joy Boy or all the candidates for Joy Boy, so Luffy and Momo and everybody, and then I'm going to take over Onigashima, then take over Wano, and then take over the world as a pirate paradise. That's my ultimate goal, right? Yeah, or here's another idea, too. Maybe Kaido is afraid... Maybe Kaido wants to have the title of Joy Boy, but he's afraid somebody else might get it as well. So it's sort of like, you know, time to eliminate the competition. You know, something like that, where he's like, all right, well, I'm the one that wants to go to Laugh Tale and find the One Piece and do all that stuff, right? And in order to do that, and truly, you know, be the ruler of the world the way that I want, I have to bear this title of Joy Boy, but there can only be one, as the Highlander would say. So it's like, I'm just gonna crush and devastate everybody that would even, you know, potentially be a risk of that title, like everybody that has the will of D. You know, we joked about his name being Kaido, and it's probably not that, but it is interesting that out of all of the Yonko, Kaido's is the only one who we don't know his full name. Other than Shanks, of course. We don't know his either. Although Shanks, I mean, if there was any other member of the Yonko that would have the will of D, it would also be Shanks. I think that makes sense. So, yeah, we don't know Kaido's full name. Maybe Rocks maybe found him as a baby and just picked him up, and he's just like, your name's Kaido now, and that's like the one name that he gave him, and that's all he has, right? Although, it is important to mention, let's say it is. Let's say Kaido's name is just Kaido. Like, he doesn't have a last name, he doesn't have a family name, whoever raised him didn't give him one, or whatever. I think that Odin carries the will of D, even though he didn't have the initial, because that's not like in Wano's customs right now. So it would make sense that, you know, even if you don't have the actual initial in your name, you could still bear it. So I guess Kaido could bear it. You know, of course, Blackbeard has it, Marshall D. Teach. And then we have Charlotte Linlin, Edward Newgate. You know, Whitebeard didn't have it, of course. His name is representative of the new gate, you know, opening the gate to like a new era sort of deal. That's the reference with his name as well. But yeah, I don't know if you'd be okay with that, with like Kaido having the will of D or whatever, or he might just be like, well, even if I'm not, I'm still going to be, right? He's just like, you know, I don't listen to prophecies. He's not as paranoid as like Orochi was with like Toki's prophecy, but he's just like, Joy Boy's going to be born somewhere in the world, huh? All right, well, I guess I know what I have to do. I'll defeat all the other people, and then I'll claim the title. Even if I can't have it, like for some reason I simply can't hold that title, I will. Could be something like that. I'm not really sure. But, you know, there's a lot more to Kaido than just, like, this really strong duck-dragging guy. You know, that's just like, I'm gonna beat you down, or anything like that. No, there's a lot more to Kaido where he knows probably a fair amount when it comes to, like, the will of D. He probably doesn't know everything, but he knows a fair amount, and maybe some stuff that happened in the Void Century. Like, when you achieve the rank of Yonko, and you are taking over the country of Wano, you probably have a lot of information you're privy to that the rest of the world doesn't know. Just like, look at it this way. Wano was closed off from the world for so long, there might have been records, maybe not like explanations on how to read the poneglyphs, but records of the Void Century or the time during the Void Century in the castle that Orochi had access to, and then Kaido learned about. So there you go. He might have learned that stuff, and he's just like, ah, I see. So that's how it really goes, right? So he knows a lot, and it's going to be very interesting to see a Kaido backstory on, like, where his story really started with rocks, and how it went with, like, you know, Big Mom saving him at God Valley, and then getting the dragon fruit, and then eventually building up his own crew, and then going to take over Wano and joining the alliance with Orochi. I want to see this whole story really from Kaido's perspective and how all this started, right? Because that'll really, like, open it up a little bit more on, like, what is his ultimate goal. Like, we know what his ultimate goal is, to make a pirate paradise, but it seems like there's other stuff involved there. Like, Kaido, to me, definitely wants to reach Laugh-Tale, and he wants to discover what's going on about the world. I'm starting to really get that. Like, Kaido is a lot more curious about the nature of existence in the world than he's initially letting on with his demeanor, you know what I mean? Well, anyway, this is a little bit of a shorter video for me. It was like less than 20 minutes or so that's insane, right? But at any rate, I hope you guys enjoyed, and now I can finally start making the video that I've wanted to. What would happen if Chopper wrestled Kaido? That's the thing I want to know about. That's the video everybody wants to see, right? Of course. Get to that next time. Probably. Maybe not. Have a good one, everybody. Tekking, signing out.